To illustrate generated normal map, I'm going to show this little example. So here I have a cone and a plane. Okay, you take the plane and you go into edit mode, hit A, and you give it UVs. So U, unwrap. That's stage 1. Then you go over here to your UV image editor, which incidentally I got from going here, right click, split area, click, and then go over here to UV image editor. And then I go image, new image. And I'll call this generated normal map. I'll say this is 2048 by 2048 and hit OK. This one has to have a texture and it has to have UVs. This thing does not have to have UVs. This is just my change of mesh. Okay. Now if you want it to look smoother, you can go and add a multi-res to this one. But this object fails as far as its topology. So I will state that if you want that to turn out better, here's how I do it. Is if you go into a cube and generate a cube and take its face at the top and shrink it down slowly, a little bit at a time, and then hit Control R, put an edge loop in here, Control R, put an edge loop down here, and then take the face at the very bottom and hit Control E, which is extrude, and then right click. Okay, well this one has much better topology in the fact that now if I add a multi-res to it and hit subdivide, it's much smoother. So that's why topology is very important in 3D. Okay, let's do this. Scale that down. And W. So I'm not really necessarily touching the surface, but I am in some way. I got it close to the surface. And what I'm going to do is grab this object first and then hold shift and grab this object. This thing has a normal and it's facing in one direction, up. Okay, just to show you how to get that normal and how to look at it, hit N on the keyboard and go to face normal. So check. It has to be in edit mode, has to be highlighted as far as the face goes, and then you can look at it. So that normal right there is measuring the distance between the surface and the peak of this, and a normal goes on forever. It actually just all the way up, linearly forever. But I could state how far the measurement goes in the bake. So here, I grab this one in object mode, hold shift, grab this one, and go into the camera, go to bake, normals, and by default it's like this, selected to active. Now I click that and it says bias. Well, let's put the bias at 0 and just generate this. And based upon the multi-res state here, it's going to take a couple minutes to actually generate, but it'll be a much smoother build. If you want it to generate faster, you lower the polygon count on the object. In fact, you know what? Just for the video, I might do that real quick. Hey, I said real quick. That's funny. So let's go in here and lower that just a tad, right about there, and then we'll apply it. And then bake. Alright, so this is what I get. A very weird looking map. And this is because the bias means the distance from the object to the object point. Okay, and you might say distant, but that's not true. Distance is the distance from the object to the object. The bias is the understanding of the surface to the top of the surface of this one. So that's why I like using bias rather than distance. If you put this to 20, it's not going to really hurt too much because it'll stop wherever it sees change. It might generate a little hotter map, but this is essentially a high fidelity normal map that is generated. And you can see that there's all kinds of colors that were never illustrated back in the one that we generated from the tiles. So let's look at this. Let's save image as. Go to desktop, go to Unity Workflow, Game, Assets, Shaders. And I'll say this is a generated normal map. I want this to be a TGA. And let's go back to Unity. Okay, so now I have this new map. Let's go in here and look at what that looks like. Let me fix now. Wow, that's a lot of change. And let me just hit the light over here. You can see how the change right here, this is the black side of it. Watch what happens. But it's still just there on the surface. And if I go like this, I cannot see it. So when you look at generated normal maps and high fidelity normal maps, no matter how high they are, you're still toned down by the engine. So just know that. You're toned down by the engine. It's all how the engine perceives normal maps. And you should test that out by making some kind of generated map. Now in UDK, that might be a little bit more bumpy in that area. But in Unity, it tones it down quite a bit. So that is generating a normal map based upon geometry. That's kind of like the preferred state as far as high fidelity goes. But the problem is it's not like you can model out a bunch of rocks. You could model out tiles, however. I could take this and build in Blender, you know, just take a box and take this and scale it and hit W. Not necessarily touching the surface, but just above it. And Shift D. Shift D. So if I have these over and over again, and I choose all of these, I can just join them, click this, click that, and generate a normal map. I want to get this off the surface all the way. So. Now, if you have a hard time highlighting things, I can click here and then hold Shift and click, and that'll be another way to highlight the items. Bake. And yeah, I have a hard time selecting that and that. But, and you have to adjust the bias until, you know, you see some different things going on. Let's put this down a little bit further. Since it's a straight down, I might have to I have to do this a little bit differently, and I don't want to go all the way through this, but I'm going to just hit subdivide, and these are going to turn into buttons, but that's okay. It'll illustrate the fact that it works. There we go. So a straight down approach didn't work. You would have to make, if you took my modeling class, I call them squares or smooth squares. And that's just taking a box and putting edge loops all around the outside edge and then hit smooth. That way they don't turn out to be like this. But that is how you generate a normal map again. So enjoy and have fun with that. I know you're going to all have some really cool ideas when it comes to generating normal maps. And trust me when I say it'll be in the actual assignment. So, all right, let's move on to the next video.